They asked me to talk about my first night in the trenches. Took me 36 years to be able to say these words out loud. I was 22 when I shipped out with the AEF in the spring of 1918. Farm boy from outside Springfield, Illinois. Never been further than Chicago before that. The recruiters came through town in 17, all brass buttons and big promises. Make the world safe for democracy, they said. Adventure of a lifetime. My pa didn't want me to go, but I was young and stupid and thought I knew better. The crossing took 2 weeks. Most of us were sick as dogs. We landed at Saint-Nazaire, then trained north toward the front. You could hear it before you could see it. This constant rumble, like distant thunder that never stopped. The French civilians we passed, they had this look in their eyes, like they were already ghosts. They put us with a British unit for seasoning. That's what they called it, seasoning. Like we were cuts of meat being prepared. A week of training behind the lines, learning about gas masks and trench foot and how to fix a bayonet. The British sergeant, a man named Cooper with half his face burned away, he told us straight, "Half of you won't make it through your first week. The ones who do won't be the same lads who went in." I didn't believe him. None of us did. We marched up to the line on a Tuesday evening in June. The Aisne sector, they told us, quiet front. The communication trenches went on forever, zigzagging through mud that sucked at your boots with every step. The smell hit us first, sweet and rotten and chemical all at once. Death and cordite and chlorine and shit all mixed together. That was the smell of the Western Front. Once you smell it, you never forget it. We reached the front line trench just as the sun was setting. Red and purple sky, almost beautiful if you didn't know what you were looking at. The trench was narrower than I expected. Barely 6 feet deep in places. Duckboards on the bottom, slick with mud and God knows what else. The British lads we were relieving, they couldn't get out fast enough. One of them, couldn't have been more than 19, grabbed my arm as he passed. "Keep your head down, Yank," he said. "Jerry's got snipers watching every inch of the parapet." Our sergeant, a man named Kowalski from Detroit, assigned us our positions. I got paired with Eddie Brennan, a kid from Boston who wouldn't shut up. Talked a mile a minute about everything and nothing. I think he was scared. Hell, we all were. The trench was alive. Rats the size of cats scurrying along the boards. Lice in every seam of our uniforms. Water seeping up through the mud no matter how many times we bailed it out. And the noise. Constant. Even in a quiet sector, there was always something. A rifle crack, a flare popping. The distant crump of artillery. As darkness fell, they told us about Stand 2. Everyone up on the fire step, rifles ready, waiting for an attack that might come or might not. That's when you learn that war isn't charging across fields with bayonets fixed. War is waiting, waiting in the mud and the dark and the cold, wondering if the next second is when a bullet finds you. Eddie was next to me on the fire step, peering over the sandbags into no man's land. "Can't see a damn thing," he whispered. "That's the point," Kowalski said. "They can't see you either." Probably. That word did a lot of work in the trenches. The star shells started around 9. Germans would fire them up, and they'd hang there in the sky, burning bright white, casting everything in these stark shadows. When the light hit no man's land, you could see it. The wire, the shell craters filled with water, and the bodies. Some fresh, some not. Some in khaki, some in field gray. All of them dead. Eddie saw them and went quiet. Didn't say another word for hours. That's when the shelling started. You never get used to the sound of incoming artillery. Every veteran who tells you different is lying. You hear that whistle, that shriek cutting through the air, and your guts turn to ice. You don't know where it's going to land. Could be 50 yards away. Could be right on top of you. The first shell hit 20 yards to our left. The ground shook like an earthquake. Dirt and debris rained down on us. Someone was screaming, high-pitched animal screaming. I pressed myself against the trench wall, hands over my head, like that would do a damn thing against high explosive. Another shell, closer this time. The concussion felt like a giant fist punching the air out of my lungs. My ears were ringing so loud I couldn't hear Eddie shouting next to me. Couldn't hear anything but that endless ringing and the crump, crump, crump of the shells coming in. Kowalski was yelling orders, but I couldn't make out the words. Men were running along the trench, trying to find cover that didn't exist. The British had warned us about this. Random harassment fire, they called it. The Germans liked to drop a few shells on quiet sectors just to keep us scared, just to remind us they were there. It worked. A shell landed directly in the trench 30 yards down from us. I saw the flash, felt the heat on my face. When the smoke cleared, there was just nothing. The men who'd been standing there were gone. Not dead, not wounded. Just gone, vaporized, turned into red mist and scattered meat. I vomited, couldn't help it. Just bent over and heaved until there was nothing left. Nobody said anything. Half the other boys were doing the same thing. The shelling lasted maybe 15 minutes, felt like hours. When it finally stopped, the silence was almost worse. You could hear men crying, whimpering in the dark, someone calling for a medic, someone else praying in Polish or Czech or some language I didn't know. That's when I saw my first dead man up close, private named Henderson from Pennsylvania. He'd been standing 10 feet away from me. Now he was lying on the duck boards with a piece of shrapnel the size of a dinner plate buried in his chest. His eyes were open. He looked surprised. Eddie was shaking so hard his teeth were chattering. "Is it over?" he kept asking. "Is it over?" "For now," I said. But I was lying. It wasn't over. It was never going to be over. The stretcher bearers came and took Henderson away. Took the other dead and wounded, too. They worked fast, efficient. They'd done this before, done it 1,000 times. Just another night on the Western Front. We stayed on the fire step. Nobody said to stand down. Nobody said anything. We just stood there in the dark and the mud, holding our rifles, waiting for whatever came next. The rats came back first, always the rats. The rest of that night crawled by. Minutes felt like hours. Every sound made you jump. A rat scratching in the dark. A piece of loose corrugated iron rattling in the wind. Your own heartbeat pounding in your ears. Around midnight, they passed around cold stew and hard biscuits. I couldn't eat. My stomach was still twisted from seeing Henderson die. But you learned fast to eat when you could, so I forced it down. Tasted like cardboard and rust. Eddie had stopped talking entirely, just stared out into no man's land with this blank look on his face. Shell shock, they'd call it later. Battle fatigue. PTSD, they say now. Doesn't matter what you call it. It's your brain breaking under weight it was never meant to carry. A British officer came by on his rounds. Captain something. I never caught his name. He had this weary look about him, like he'd aged 100 years. "First night always the worst, lads," he said. "Tomorrow you'll start getting used to it." More lies. You don't get used to it. You just learn to function while being terrified. Learn to eat and sleep and follow orders while every nerve in your body is screaming at you to run. Around 2 in the morning, the Germans started up their machine guns, just firing out into the dark, raking back and forth across no man's land. No target, just noise, intimidation, reminding us they were there, that they could reach us any time they wanted. We fired back. Orders from Kowalski. Pop up, take a shot, duck back down. I don't know if I hit anything. Probably not. You couldn't see 10 feet in that darkness. But you fired anyway because that's what you did. That's what the machine wanted, the machine. That's what it was, really. a great grinding machine that chewed up men and spat out corpses. We weren't soldiers anymore. We were parts, fuel for the fire. Dawn came eventually. It always does, though some nights you don't believe it will. The sky turned gray, then pink, then pale blue. Beautiful morning, birds singing somewhere behind the lines. Nature didn't care that men had died in the mud. The world kept turning. Stand to again, waiting for an attack that didn't come. They never told us war was mostly waiting to die. We were supposed to be relieved after 3 days in the line. That was the rotation. 3 days up, 3 days back in reserve. But something happened down south, some German attack that needed reinforcements, so they kept us in for 6 days straight. By day 4, Eddie had completely shut down. Wouldn't talk, barely ate. Just stared at the trench wall with dead eyes. Kowalski tried to get him moving, but there was nothing there anymore. Whatever made Eddie Eddie had left. Gone somewhere the shells couldn't reach. Day 5. We lost 2 more men. Sniper got Johnson through the throat while he was pissing into a tin can. Stupid way to die. They're all stupid ways to die. Martinez stepped on a weak section of duckboard and fell into the mud. Broke his leg in 3 places. Started screaming, thrashing around. The Germans heard him and dropped a shell right on our position. Martinez died. So did Murphy, who was trying to pull him out. I remember thinking, this is it. This is how I die. Not in some great charge, not defending anything that matters. Just blown apart in a muddy ditch in France, and back home they'll get a telegram and my mother will cry, and that'll be the end of it. Like I never existed. But I didn't die. Not physically. That night, the 6th night, I realized I couldn't feel anything anymore. Henderson's death had made me vomit. Martinez's death made me nothing. I watched them carry his body past, and I felt empty, hollow, like someone had scooped out everything inside me and left just the shell. That's when you know you've broken, when death stops meaning anything. The relief finally came on day 7. We stumbled out of that trench like dead men walking. Eddie had to be carried. He never spoke again, I heard later. Spent the rest of his life in a hospital somewhere in Massachusetts. I thought getting out of the trenches would fix me. Thought a few days rest, some hot food, maybe a shower, and I'd be okay again. I was wrong about that, too. You don't leave the trenches. Not really. You carry them with you. In your head, in your dreams, in the way you jump at loud noises for the rest of your life. The trenches never let you go. I served 13 more months after that first night. Château-Thierry, Belleau Wood, the Meuse-Argonne. Each battle blurred into the next. More mud, more blood, more names I tried to remember and then tried to forget. Came home in 1919. There was a parade, people cheering, throwing confetti, pretty girls kissing soldiers. Everyone wanted to hear stories about how we'd licked the Hun, how brave we were, how glorious it all was. I couldn't tell them the truth. They didn't want the truth. My mother made my favorite dinner that first night home. Pot roast, mashed potatoes, apple pie. I sat at the table and couldn't eat. The food tasted like mud. Everything tasted like mud. I excused myself and went to my old room and lay on the bed that suddenly felt too soft, too clean, too safe. I couldn't sleep in that bed. Ended up on the floor. Felt more right somehow. The nightmares started that first week. Same dream, every night. I'm back in the trench. Henderson is dying again. Eddie is screaming. The shells are falling and I can't move, can't run, can't do anything but stand there and wait to die. I wake up soaking wet, gasping for air. My mother hears me and comes in, and I can see the fear in her eyes. Fear of what her son has become. I tried to work on the farm, couldn't do it. The sound of thunder sent me diving for cover. A car backfiring in town made me hit the ground. People stared, whispered. Shell-shocked, they said. Touched. Some said I was weak, that I should just get over it. You don't get over it. You learn to live with it, or you don't. I've been married twice, divorced twice, had 3 kids I could never quite connect with. How do you explain to your son why his father wakes up screaming? How do you tell your daughter why you can't handle 4th of July fireworks? I worked a dozen jobs over the years, never kept any of them long. The war ate everything, ate my youth, my innocence, my ability to feel normal human emotions, left me with this emptiness that nothing can fill. It's been 36 years since that first night in the trenches. I'm 58 years old now. My hands shake. My hearing's shot from the artillery. I've got scars on my body and deeper scars in my mind. They gave me medals, Bronze Star, Purple Heart. I keep them in a box in the attic. Can't look at them. Sometimes people thank me for my service. Tell me I'm a hero. I smile and nod and say nothing. But I'm not a hero. Heroes died in the mud. Heroes are buried in France with white crosses marking their graves. I'm just a ghost who made it home. And that first night in the trenches, that night never ended. I'm still there, still standing on that fire step, staring into the dark, waiting for the shells to fall. Still waiting. We never really came back. None of us did. The boy who left Springfield in 1917 died in those trenches. What walks around wearing his face is something else entirely. Something that smells cordite when it rains. Something that flinches at car horns. Something that can't forget the rats, the mud, the screaming. Something that will never, ever be at peace.